Good morning, class. Today we are going to be starting our unit on the Cold War. So to start out, I want you guys to pull out your Cold War guided notes, which look like this. To fill out this note guide, you need to, every event we talk about, you need to put on this timeline. And then you need to fill out this, so the timeline here. And then you can take your notes here. If you need additional space, you can use notebook paper because we are covering quite a bit. So let's go ahead and get started. To start out with, we're going to do a quick review of World War II, which we covered last week.
Hello and welcome to the news at When, about 75 years ago, when Germany, a country still reeling from the effects of the First World War, finds itself with a leader who's about to start another one. Here with more details on this rather unwelcome sequel is Bob Hale with the World War II report. Bob.
Thank you, Sam. Well, the year is 1938. That behind me is the world, and hold on to your helmets because it's about to go to war again. Yes, it's 20 years since Germany lost the First World War and had a load of land taken off them. And their leader, Adolf Hitler, yep, that one, has decided he wants it back. So he just takes it. I know, he's like that, which does not go down well with Britain and France, who send their prime ministers to have a little word with him. So Hitler promises that he won't take over any more territories, peace is guaranteed, and everyone lives happily ever after in candy floss houses with gingerbread roofs. But not for long! No, it turns out that Hitler has a memory much like his moustache. Very short. He forgets about this peace treaty and promptly invades Czechoslovakia, allies with Italy, and turns his eye towards Poland, followed by his tanks and his guns. But just a week before, Britain signed an agreement with Poland, promising to fight anyone who tries to invade them, which can mean only one thing. Groupon! Oh no, my mistake. All-out war! Yes, in September 1939, Britain and France, along with Australia, New Zealand and Canada, declare war on Germany and Italy, and the Second World War has begun, an event which, if we look at the dramarometer, is precisely this exciting. Yes, for 9 long months, nothing really happens, as the Allies place all their troops behind this wall, the Maginot Line, and wait for Hitler to come and get them, which he never does. Instead, he spends his time invading Norway, Denmark, and the Netherlands before sneaking past the Maginot Line through Belgium and invading France by the back door. Wow, there's a lot of you in today. So now with France under Nazi rule, Britain is on the front line, which means there's suddenly more drama than our thingy can handle, as World War II takes to the skies. Yes, no sooner have the RAF prevented a German invasion in the Battle of Britain than Hitler starts dropping bombs on British cities, with a huge blitz known unimaginatively as the Blitz. And whilst Britain stays strong, Germany grows even stronger, as Japan, Hungary and Romania all join Hitler's side, which then takes over Yugoslavia, Greece and North Africa. Yes, Adolf's got invasion fever, and despite promising that he'd never invade Russia, he then invades Russia. Honestly, it's like we can't trust him or something. And it seems that this invasion fever is catching as Japan is now bitten by the bug. Yes, after attacking the US Navy at Pearl Harbor, a Hawaiian island, a terrible movie, the Japanese take over Thailand, Burma, the Philippines, Borneo, Hong Kong and Singapore. They even have a crack at Australia. In fact, if we look at the countryometer, or map as some people like to call it, it's quite clear that Hitler's going to win and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it, right? Wrong! You see, the Russians have already started fighting back the Germans on a new Eastern Front, and America, angered by Pearl Harbor, the attack, not the movie, have joined the Allies too. Yes, now the Nazis are facing more troops from more directions than ever before, and the tide begins to turn. The Americans beat back the Japanese over the Pacific, while the British forces push the Nazis out of North Africa. The Russians push back from the east, and the Allies push up from the south, whilst over in the Far East, the Allies win back Burma. In fact, with one big push, those Nazis could be forcing for a retreat. And you know what? Here comes one big push. Yes, it's D-Day, where everyone with a name beginning with D gets to invade France and then what? Oh, right, sorry, my mistake. It's where 160,000 Allied troops with various names invade the French coast of Normandy and start forcing the Nazis back across Europe. Yes, now Hitler is facing a war on 3 fronts, or 1 bottom and 2 sides, depending on how you like to look at it. And when his Italian counterpart Mussolini is overthrown and killed, well, then the writing's on the wall for Hitler, writing that says, "You're finished, mate," but in German. So, on May the 8th, 1945, Germany surrenders and the war is finally over! Except not really, because back over in the East, Japan and the USA are still battling it out until the Japanese are forced to surrender by 2 bombs so big they wipe out entire cities. So after 6 years and 60 million deaths, World War II finally finds a fittingly foul finale. Yes, war is over, and ladies and gentlemen, all I am saying is give peace a chance. Because when, ow, you pricked me. Well, say you're sorry. Oh, silent treatment, is it? Well, you know what this means. Whoa!
Alright, so just like that video was hinting to in the end of World War II wasn't really the end of conflict in the war. When the war ended, Germany was split into two parts, and kind of opposing sides of the Allies began fighting. These two allies were the US and USSR, and one of the main things that led to this kind of issue was their political differences. The US and the USSR had two very different political systems. The first, America, obviously was a democracy. They had a capitalist economy, free elections, and competing political parties, whereas the USSR was communist, totalitarian, and they had little to no rights for citizens. These are two opposite forms of government, and it caused tension between the two world superpowers. The Soviets, during World War II, lost 20 million people, and they were growing increasingly scared of another German force. So they decided they needed to use Eastern Europe as a buffer against German aggression that could happen again. To do this, Stalin installed his satellite communist governments in most Eastern European countries like Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Yugoslavia, and East Germany. East Germany was the side of Germany that Russia was in charge of, while West Germany is the side of Germany that the US, Britain, and France were in charge of and had a democracy, whereas East Germany was communist like the USSR. To fight against this, Truman decided he needed to stop babying the Soviets and started the policy of containment. This is a US policy that would prevent any further extension of communist rule. America felt like communism was a direct threat to democracy, and if it spread, eventually America would be taken over as well. So they needed to stop it, hence the policy of containment. This kind of set up this Iron Curtain. Europe was now divided because of this. There was Western Europe, which was mostly democratic, and you can see it in blue here on the map. You see that? And then Eastern Europe, which is in red, was communist. In 1946, Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, said, "An Iron Curtain has descended across the continent, signifying this division between here, the red and the blue countries." Here are some political cartoons of the Iron Curtain. There really was this distinct difference between the areas. It became a huge issue politically as well as economically and socially in Europe. The containment policy eventually soon expanded into the Truman Doctrine. Not only did they want to contain communism, but they wanted to fuel the fight against communism. To do this, they started providing aid, which was mostly money and supplies, to support free people who are resisting outside pressures. So they were supporting countries that were fighting against communist rule at the time. This also led to the Marshall Plan. Post-war Europe was devastated economically. They had to rebuild significantly after the war, and many countries were left in turmoil. Marshall, who was the Secretary of State at the time, proposed that the US should send aid packages to European nations. Most of Western Europe accepted the help, while Eastern Europe did not. This led Western Europe's economy to flourish, while Eastern Europe's economy started to fail. Like I mentioned earlier, after the war, Germany was divided into 4 zones among the Allied forces during World War II. These Allied forces were US, France, Great Britain, and the USSR. US, France, and Great Britain combined their zones into West Germany, while the USSR controlled East Germany. This became an issue as the superpowers were now occupying areas right next to each other. So what are some problems that could arise because they are stationed right next to each other? First, I want you guys to think about it. Then we're going to pair up in your partners, and then I'll have this class share. At this point, I would have several students share their ideas, and then we would move on. Another huge, important part of the Cold War was NATO. Because of the problems that we've talked about and mentioned now, Russia was growing very suspicious of the Western forces, and they made a blockade in Berlin, which refused to let any of the Western forces into Berlin. This blockade increased Western Europe's fear of the Soviets as well. As a result, 10 Western European countries joined the US and Canada to form a defense alliance, which became known as NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. During this time, the Cold War again starts to heat up. One of the main players in this was China. There was a leader in China called Chiang Kai-shek. He was the leader of the Nationalist Party, which was primarily in southern and eastern China. They relied on aid from the US as part of the Marshall Plan to fight against communism, but they had weak leadership and poor morale, and they were suffering from a failing economy. Now the Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong, ruled North China. They were receiving financial aid from the USSR. This financial aid attracted peasants by promising land, and they had highly motivated leadership. These two competing parties ended up leading to the Chinese Civil War, which was the nationalists versus the communists. The country at the time was too weak, and even with the aid from the US, the nationalists had to flee to Taiwan. Mao and the communists established the People's Republic of China. With the fall of China, America feared the communist expansion even more, and China is still communist today. Okay, so now we're going to do a group activity. So I'm going to have you guys split into your groups, and you need to make sure every person has a book and a note guide. Using the group activity section of your note guide, you will become experts on your assigned economic or political reaction to the Cold War. We've covered a couple in the lecture, but there's many more that you guys are going to teach each other. You will then make a poster and present the poster to the class. This is the sheet that I want you guys to use. So you can see here you'll need the event, the background and history, the US side of the conflict, the Soviet side of the conflict, and then you need to come up with a mnemonic to remember what happened in that event. So how will you be rated? First, you need to complete the note guide. You guys will turn those in for points. Second, your poster, which will cover the history and background. It will have your mnemonic device on it, and it will cover both sides. So basically, you just need to cover all the things in the first. And then your oral presentation, which will be based on this rubric right here.